My capstone is over the psychology of dark humor and more generally what makes things funny. Why do we laugh at these jokes that contain this dark, morbid subject matter? Jokes that deal with death, sexism, racism, other forms of prejudice. What makes these jokes funny? And later on in my presentation, I'm going to ask you to turn to the person on your right and try to tickle them. So be looking forward to that later on. And I first became interested in the psychology of humor when I was in 4th grade. I signed up to do a talent show. And I decided that my comedy routine, being the witty whippersnapper that I was, would be a series of knock-knock jokes. So I was going through the internet, picking my favorite jokes, and I didn't really have a real method to why I was picking the jokes I was picking. It was just more like they struck me as funny or they didn't. And as I was backstage going over my routine, I was hit by this panic attack, like, what if these jokes are only funny to me? What am I going to do if no one else laughs? Luckily, everyone applauded afterward, but whether or not the jokes were actually funny or just funny to see me up there trying to do a comedy routine, I'm not going to say. So that's where my initial questions came from. And earlier this year I watched the dark comedy Heathers, whose predominant subject matter is teenage suicide. And I was laughing at scenes that other people didn't find funny. And I wondered what caused this discrepancy in senses of humor. And Heathers, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, it deals with the scene we're going to watch. What you need to know is this girl here. She is the meanest popular girl at school, and the protagonist, Veronica. Veronica kills Heather and stages her death as a teenage suicide, and we're going to watch the funeral scene here.
But rather a society that tells its youth that the answers can be found in the MTV video games. We must pray.
And the screenplay shows these characters in their monologues as they go and talk about their deceased peer. And the students are very flippant in how they're addressing. One jock even summarized what my topic of humor is about. He's like, it's a joke, man. Jeez, people are so serious. So that's why people wouldn't find this scene funny, because they're making jokes. It's making light of a scene that is someone's funeral. That's typically not funny. So we're going to explore what makes this sort of dark humor funny from a psychological perspective. And the handout I just gave you summarizes the results of the survey that I conducted to establish a correlation between the humorous and the offensive. A group of 34 Pembroke seniors, 15 boys and 19 girls, were given a series of jokes that contained an element of dark humor, and they had to assess on a 5-point scale both how funny and how offensive they found the jokes. And the results are summarized there, because nothing is funnier than a chart. So I will reference these results throughout my presentation. And for my project, I also wrote a comedy routine, bits of which you guys will get to see in reference to my research. So first we need to establish some technical definitions. What is humor, and then in contrast, what is dark humor? My field expert, Dr. Peter McGraw, who works for the University of Colorado Boulder, he supervises the humor research lab there. He defines humor as one of 3 responses or all of 3 responses. Humor can be an emotion, positive feeling of amusement. Humor could be a judgment, the cognitive acknowledgement of something as funny. Humor could be a behavior, laughing. And so here we have an example from the White House Correspondents' Dinner that just happened a few days ago. Cecily Strong is a comedian with SNL, and she's making this joke to the president. After 6 years in office, Mr. President, your approval ratings are at 48%. Not only that, your gray hair is at 85%. Your hair is so white now you can talk back to the police. And Obama is laughing at this joke. The President of the United States is laughing at this joke that deals with the racial tensions that are pervading the country, a subject that is not funny in the slightest. And yet this joke is perceived as humorous by the leader of our country. So technical definition is dark humor juxtaposes morbid or ghastly elements with comical ones. It makes you laugh at subjects that you shouldn't find funny. It kind of makes you go, oh, I'm not finding that funny, well, I'm not a bad person. And so dark humor in this way is a spectrum. So dark humor is at the far end of the spectrum. It deals with serious, easily perceived as offensive subject matters, whereas some benign puns would be at the other end of the spectrum. So there are 3 major historical theories of humor. Aristotle proposed a theory of incongruity when 2 elements that normally don't go together are synthesized. They create an attempt at humor. So we know that the class is ready for the test. 33 screaming frogs. You're describing students' reaction with a YouTube screen cap. 2 things that normally don't go together. And whether or not you find this funny or not, we'll talk about what makes things funny.
It's okay to laugh.
okay. It's also okay not to laugh. We'll talk about how you do that too. Freud, true to form, says that humor is a release of sexual or aggressive tension. So this yik yak here, the sonic hair toothbrush is named after the words I never heard from my father. So this is a release of aggressive, and depending on how much you believe Freud, maybe sexual tensions that is being shown in this joke. So that would be an example of Freud's theory, how it applies to humor. And Thomas Hobbes, who wrote Leviathan, he articulates a theory of superiority, that people laugh at the downfalls and misfortunes of other people. So this woman here tweeted, feminism is a cancer. He typed vaping and chugging Mountain Dew. It's killing us men. The microwave ding. His taquitos were ready. So this woman, through her humor attempt, is showing how her feminist beliefs are superior to this man's through showcasing this man's hypocrisy, the irony of his claims, showing her beliefs and herself to be above him. These three theories by themselves, though, are insufficient in explaining humor attempts. For example, say you were to kill your wife. It would be a release, it would be incongruity because you're not supposed to normally kill your wife. It would be a release of sexual and aggressive tensions, and it would be a certain superiority, but it's far from funny in most circumstances. In all circumstances, it's not funny. So, Dr. Pembroke, my field expert, reconciled the elements of these previous theories in what is known as the benign violation theory. It's a rather unfortunate name. A situation is a violation of the way in which you perceive the world. Something seems wrong. The situation is benign at the same time, though. These two reactions must be perceived simultaneously. So something has to seem wrong, but it has to seem harmless or less threatening. An example that Dr. McGraw used is falling. So if someone's walking down the stairs, there's nobody, he just keeps falling. There's no violation there, nothing's wrong. If someone falls down and like this dude demonstrates, just gets on right back walking, that's funny, because he's fine, he hasn't been hurt. If someone falls and like they don't get up and they're like dying, that's not funny because it's what they call malign violation. You can't make that funny, it's not seen as harmless. And if you do find that funny for some twisted reason, that's an example of dark humor. Stuff that you'd normally be more offended by, stuff that's more serious, stuff more people don't find funny. So that's what leads to the subjectivity of humor. Sense of humor is an extremely personal part of you. It deals with your personality, your beliefs, your values. All these things contribute to what you find funny. So what I told you guys at the beginning of the presentation, I'm going to ask you to tickle the person next to you. If you're next to your friends, like you guys were, you guys laugh like, oh, we can tickle each other, yeah. But if you're beastly over here, you're like, oh man, I'm kind of close to Mr. Cosby. So that kind of contributes to why people find certain things funny. So the next question becomes, what is a violation? Like we just talked about, tickling, physical violation, violation of your personal space. Identity violation, we're going to talk about in this.
Okay, do me. Something stereotypical so I can get up really quick.
Okay, I like your food.
Outback Steakhouse. I'm Australian, mate.
Pam, come on. I like your food. No, come on. Stir the pot. Stir the melting pot, Pam. Let's do it. Let's get ugly. Let's get real.
Okay. If I have to do this, based on stereotypes that are totally untrue, that I do not agree with, you would maybe not be a very good driver.
Oh man, am I a woman?
So, that joke, identity violation, is disparage against a group of people and make fun of someone's sense of dignity. So, jokes against certain groups of people, racist, sexist jokes, that doesn't fall under the category of identity violations. Cultural violations, if you look at your sheet, there's a joke that was one of my sample jokes I used. Jenny's family was in debt, so Jenny sold her virginity on eBay to pay off her father's debt. And this cultural joke violates the cultural sanctity of the taboo that women's virginities are commodified. That's something that's not normally talked about, but is generally understood. And when you bring that up in a joke, when you make light of something like that, that is a violation of the unspoken sort of norm in society. Communication violations are another type of violation. You've got sarcasm, saying one thing and meaning another. You've got accents, funny accents. A lot of comedians make their trade-off accents. And you have puns. I'm just a po' boy. Nobody loves me. Some people don't laugh at that because they think it's stupid. We'll talk about that later. And you have logic violations, which we'll watch here. It is a logic violation. Okay, so the next question becomes, we've got the violations, how do we make them benign? 3 primary ways to make a violation benign. You can add psychological distance, you can have a weak commitment to a violated norm, or it could be an alternative norm that you're perceiving the joke through that will help make the violation benign. But first, there are actually 3 levels to getting a joke. First, you have to acknowledge that a norm exists. So on your sheet, there's a joke, a French tank has 2 gears, neutral and reverse. If you have limited knowledge of World War II, and you do not understand French, have an unfortunate history of running away from conflict, then you will not get that joke. You won't see a norm that's there to be violated. So first you have to see the norm. Then you have to see the violation of the norm. Some people will drop out at that level. And then you have to see how the norm is benign. So this increases the subjectivity of humor attempts because there's a lot of mental juggling that you have to do when you see a humor attempt and see how it can be seen as benign. And a lot of people, when they see racist, sexist, prejudiced jokes, they won't see how it's benign because they don't think that those sort of subject matters should be made into things that you should laugh at. They don't think those threats can be neutralized, or else you will perpetuate the beliefs that are contained in the subject matter of the joke. So when you laugh at a joke that deals with those sensitive subject matters, when Obama laughed at Cecily Strong's joke, he's relaxed in his critical standard, his critical mindset, and he's allowed himself to see the humor in that. And some people just refuse to do that. They just think that's not funny because it's too serious, and I refuse to see it as benign or harmless because the subject matter inherently is not. So the first way you can make yourself see a violation as benign is through adding psychological distance. If something happened a long time ago, or it happened to someone else, or it just doesn't seem real to you. And one of the things we're going to talk about to illustrate this point is the comparison between the joke about Al-Qaeda on the sheet, what's Al-Qaeda's favorite football team, the New York Jets, and Anne Frank's joke that's also on the sheet, you guys can see it. The joke about 9/11 was both more offensive and less funny than the joke about the Holocaust. Probably in some part to do with the people's tastes in the subject matter of the joke, but also because 9/11 happened both in the US and within our lifetime. So it's more real to us. We're less likely to see that threat as benign. And one person who people commented their responses to the jokes, one person who commented said, it's always too soon, but it's funny somehow more for myself because I did not experience it like the other people did. There were 5 on the offensive scale, 4 on the funny scale. So that sort of sums up why someone would find it funny and be amused at the same time. There's also a joke about the pedophilic priest. Priest, a pedophile, and a rapist walk into a bar, they order a drink. People who identified as being Christian, they were both more offended and less amused by that joke than people who identified as atheists or not practicing a religion, because that joke is too close to their personal values. They don't have enough distance to see how that's funny. It's too real for them, people say. Too real, too soon. These are phrases that signify there's not enough psychological distance to find that funny. Conversely, though, psychological distance can work the opposite way. Sometimes you have to have a close proximity to your subject matter to be able to find it funny, or you won't acknowledge that there's a norm that can be violated. So, comedy routine time. I used an example of psychological distance in my routine, but I used how you need inverse effect, or inverse relationship with it to find something funny. So, yeah, here we go. Doctors say teenagers' brains don't start fully functioning until 10 o'clock. So naturally, we start school at 8 a.m. because, just in case you're not fully awake at 8 o'clock, we've got these lawnmowers to wake you up, these school-sponsored alarm systems, because the school acknowledges a need for healthy grass. So if you don't go to Pembroke, you will not understand why the grass is such a joke in this school. There's literally always water. It's raining, the sprinklers be on everywhere. So if you don't go to school, you don't have that proximity to the subject matter, you won't find it funny. Next one we have commitment to the norm. So here's a joke that objectifies women. Why does the bread wear white? So the dishwasher can match the refrigerator. One girl commented, I see too much of this treatment of women. It's just too real for me. Boys were both less offended and more amused by this joke than girls were. Because the boys, this norm, this gender role, doesn't apply to boys. It only applies to girls. This is a reality for girls. For boys, it's just like, it can be a funny joke. It's more benign to them. It's more harmless to them because it doesn't affect them like it affects girls. Boys are getting their dishes washed. They're happy in this situation. Alternative norm. This is the joke that's on the sheet. This one time at camp we got so baked. Oh, I have to do my commitment to norm example from my sheet, so go back. So, around this time of year, seniors are posed with the college question. A foolproof way to shut these people up is to say you're taking some time off to help a significant other pursue their art. Or even better, say you're going to KU. So, if you are going to KU, you're probably not going to laugh at that. And at Pembroke, this has to do with psychological distance as well. You have to be familiar with Pembroke's cultural stigma against state schools because we're such a prestigious institution, even though these beliefs are unfounded and KU is a great school, Mr. Griffith. This prejudice exists anyway, and you're laughing in part because you're not the person who has to say you're going to KU at this school. And it's a reality of the culture at Pembroke, and it's something that when made fun of, it kind of makes you uncomfortable to laugh at because it's not very nice. So alternative norm. This one time at camp, we got so baked. So on the one hand, you're talking about the mass genocide of the Jews, how they used to gas people like Anne Frank. And on the other hand, you've got just a teenage pothead talking about what he did over the summer. And so when you put these two together, you've got two alternative norms that this joke can fall under. When you put them together, you get an attempt at humor. And my example here is the school, good old Pembroke, even sponsors, and all expenses included, European alcohol immersion for our sophomores, free stomach pumps included. And on our left, we have the esteemed pub, I think it's called a trip to the ER. So here we have someone, traditional tour guide showing the places, but instead they're making fun of how the grass trip kind of had a nasty reputation for drinking. So now we're going to get to the dark side of humor, which I hope you understand how people can find these darkly humorous subjects funny through psychological distance, commitment to a norm, or alternative norms. So the Darwin Awards, a website that makes fun of the spectacularly stupid ways people manage to kill themselves. You'll read those and you'll laugh because you're not those people who are dying in stupid ways. You're laughing because you're above them. Even though it's not funny, people are dying, people are still dead, but the ways in which they died are so incredibly, like, how do they manage to do that? Why do they think that was a good idea? That you laugh at it because you're not them. You don't understand how someone could do that and you are above them, which you appear to be. Aggressive humor is a typical type of humor that's found in dark comedy. Aggressive humor is intended to criticize or manipulate others. It's meant to be disparaging, mean-hearted sarcasm, teasing, things like that. Things of that sort. And when people laugh at these, it helps establish social hierarchies, establish superiority of some people over others. When you're laughing at someone, they'll tend to stop doing the behavior that's causing your laughter because they don't like feeling inferior. Humor has a great way to lift people up and also have a detriment on people that humor is basing itself on, people that the humor is bringing down. And Schadenfreude is the German term for laughing at someone else's pain, so that's what we're talking about with the Darwin Awards. You're laughing at literally someone else's pain. And comedians have a popular cultural reputation of being sort of messed up on the inside, sort of dark and twisted. Robin Williams last year committed suicide because he suffered from chronic depression. So the question becomes, how is someone who makes his life currency in humor, how does someone who makes whose job is to make people laugh, why are they so depressed on the inside? And the argument is that comedians have to be sort of cynical and pessimistic to see the violations in the world and know how to make these violations benign. A study conducted in 2014 by a group of British scientists found comedians to possess more psychotic traits than the other people who were taking, the non-comedians who were also taking the study. And so the argument goes that these psychotic traits help comedians to think outside the box and see the violations, see how to make other people laugh, be really in tune with the audience's reaction to these types of jokes and how to make these violations benign. And this leads into how humor is used in society, how dark humor especially is used in society as a coping mechanism. The Onion, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a satirical publication, and on September 26th, following 9/11, they had a problem on their hands. How are we going to make satire out of this terrible tragedy? the comedian Gilbert Gottfried, a few days after 9/11, he made a joke saying that his plane was going to stop at the Twin Towers, and nobody laughed at that. He was actually booed off the stage. They didn't even release the tape of him saying it. It was just reported in newspapers. So The Onion is like, okay, how are we going to make comedy out of this? And so they have headlines like, U.S. vows to defeat whoever it is we're at war with. Hijackers surprised to find themselves in hell. America Life turns into bad Jerry Bruckheimer movie. So these headlines like this make people feel better. It helps them achieve catharsis because it helps them to distance themselves from the tragedy. They say, oh, this is an awful thing. And when you laugh at it, it seems less bad. You're making the violation benign. You're distancing yourself from the tragedy. It helps you to cope. And The Onion received a deluge of fan mail in response to this article, to this publication, because it's like, hey, it really helped me to cope with this. It really helped me understand this. It really helped me navigate this tragedy that I wasn't really sure how I was dealing with it. Humor is one of the primary methods through which people deal with their troubles. Gallows humor is one of the more specific genres of dark humor. One of my sources was living in Czechoslovakia during the time of the Nazi occupation, and he cited that the Czechs would also often use humor to raise their own confidence and simultaneously disable the Nazi morale. One of the jokes was, do you know why Hitler has not invaded England yet? Because the German officers could not manage to learn in time all the English irregular verbs. It's probably better, I'm feeling, in their normal language, in their native language. But you get the picture, they're making fun of the Germans all as well. So this made them feel better. It helped them bond over a shared experience, over a shared tragic experience. It made them feel better. But the research indicates or suggests that this type of gallows humor functions best in situations where there's not really another way to cope. If there's another way to cope and the situation is not as drastic as being occupied by the Nazis, generally this gallows humor has a destabilizing effect on the morale of people. For example, a study that was conducted by in a hospital found that this type of aggressive, this gallows humor, it made people feel, it actually lowered the morale. And you've been around people like that who are constantly making negative humor, negative jokes, and it just sort of brings the mood down when there are more positive ways to cope with what is going on right now. This sort of cynical attitude can get really old if the situation is not as dire as it was in Czechoslovakia. So we have a lot of thin lines in the world of humor, and really everything is subjective based on your own sense of humor and your own values and your own inclinations of what you will find funny. And primarily though, dark humor serves to unite people in shared experiences, and it helps them navigate these situations that are causing them pain. If you turn them into something funny, it helps you to cope with it. And so that's what I found to be the primary function of dark humor. So I'll open it up for questions. The girls, on the other hand, should just be flattered by the attention. So that's an aggressive joke. That's a darkly humorous joke because it deals with something, especially the Pembroke people, that's a really sensitive topic right now. We shouldn't really be laughing at it. And yet we are, because we probably have more psychological distance from it than other people. Yeah, see Eugenia, you're going, nah, Paige, nah, stop there. Yeah. So that would be an example of aggressive humor that targets a group of people.
When you want to turn to an earlier topic of dark humor, because this was alluded to earlier and not necessarily seen, certain individuals in this room thought it would be very interesting to see Ms. Pepitone's presentation of the knock-knock jokes. So I'd like to share with you all the experience that preceded the experience of the capstone that you witnessed today. Some of you will be taking down memory lane, I guess, and others of you will be seeing this for the first time.
I'm sorry.
Knock, knock. Here's some knock, knock jokes for you. Knock, knock. Toad or not to be. That is knock, knock. Repeat. Who. Knock, knock. Tank. You're welcome. Knock, knock. Move. Don't get so excited. It's just knock, knock. Knock, knock. Wendy. Wendy Winlow's secret. Knock, knock. One shoe. One shoe come home, Bill Belly. One shoe come home. Knock, knock. Oh, where? Oh, where? Knock, knock. Cows go. Cows don't go. Who they go? Moo. Knock, knock. God bless you. Knock, knock. Cash. No thanks, I prefer almonds. School. School outside. Knock,